I have come to believe that a free and open society cannot continue much longer if social media continues to damage three things that I really care about. And those are young people, universities, and liberal democracy.
I did. I left the internet for an entire year. I was 26 years old, and it was May 1st, 2012, and I pulled the plug. And there were a lot of reasons, but the main reason was probably that I was 26 years old, and I didn't have life figured out, and I was really overwhelmed, and it was a bit of a crisis, and it just felt like everything was too much, and I couldn't win. And the internet kept on coming, and there's more emails. You can't win against your email inbox, because the moment you hit archive on the very last one, you're going to get a new email. And you can't win on Twitter because there's so much Justin Bieber to talk about. And there's just, and I just felt this in a really overwhelming, very personal way, that the internet was sort of defeating me and suppressing me.
In my remaining time, I'm going to make the case that social media has caused devastation in these three areas since 2012. And then I'll say what I think government should and should not do. So I'll make three main points. The first is the fragilization of Gen Z. So in August 2017, Jean Twenge wrote an article in The Atlantic with the provocative title, "Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation?" And when I read it, I thought, wow, Jean is taking a risk here, because she showed these graphs with these hockey stick curves, but it was just 2 or 3 years of data. Because in 2017, all we had was data up through about 2015. And so we had 2 or 3 years showing upturns in all these things. And I thought, well, if that turns down, she's going to look foolish. But it didn't turn down. It kept going up and up and up. Now, when that article came out, there were a lot of critics. A lot of people said, oh, she's exaggerating, she's cherry picking, oh, the trend isn't real. Gen Z, they're just comfortable talking about it. That's why the numbers are going up a little, because it's a good thing. They're willing to admit that they're depressed. So there were a lot of skeptics right after the article came out, and Robbie in his chapter on this area quotes a number of those skeptics, but those are all from 2017, at least most of the citations were from 2017. That was a legitimate take in 2017. But in the years since then, the numbers have gone up so far that the Surgeon General recently issued an advisory on teen mental health, because those numbers have gone up by 50 to 100% on many measures. In fact, if you're still skeptical that there's a real epidemic of mental illness, if you think it's just, changes in self-report on surveys, let's look at behavior. Jean and I have been collecting all the studies we can find from the US and the UK and Canada. And so here are the numbers for self-harm. And this is hospital admissions. This is not self-report. Hospital records for teenagers brought in because they harmed themselves, mostly cutting themselves. If you graph it out, the lines are pretty stable. They don't move around very much up until about 2009, 2010. And then suddenly, in the next 5 years, the numbers are up 62% for older teen girls. The rate of hospital admission per 100,000 in the population is up 62%. For girls aged 10 to 14, these are little girls. These are prepubescent or just entering puberty girls. The rate is up 189%. By 2015, nearly triples by 2015, and it's up more since then. Same thing in the UK, same thing in Canada, and similar story for suicide. There it's up for both boys and girls. And again, for the youngest kids, the 10 to 14s, the percentage increase is more than double.
I, of course, owe my entire livelihood to the internet. I was 12 years old when I started using the internet and I contracted the sickness. And I've probably used the internet for the majority of my waking hours since then. I was a web designer as a teenager. I started writing about technology as a journalist when I was about 20. And so it's all I've ever really known. I don't know what life is like, without the internet, without being constantly connected, without an email inbox. I do remember a time before Twitter, but it's really hazy. And so I also had this desire to get some stuff done. I wanted to do some personal study, some reading. I had some writing projects that I was putting off, and I figured if I quit the internet, which is using all of my time, I would have unlimited free time to accomplish the things that I desired to accomplish. So I quit the internet.
In a few years, the suicide rate has doubled, and then it stayed either level or increasing. Now, what caused it? That's the key thing. Now, Robbie and the other skeptics point to studies. There are a lot of studies out there, and many of them find no relationship between the amount of time young people spend on their devices and their rates of depression. Now, there's one particularly influential study by Andrew Shabilsky and Amy Orban, 2019. They reported an overall correlation of around 0.03 between time on devices and various measures of depression in 3 large data sets. And that study, where they reported, oh, this is about as big as the correlation between mental illness and eating potatoes. That finding got a lot of press all over the world. And since then, a lot of experts say, oh, well, we looked at this and there's nothing there. But here's the problem with those studies. They lump all kids together, that is boys and girls. They lump all screen activities together, including watching Netflix, texting with your friends, FaceTime, browsing the web, and posting photos of yourself in a bikini for people to make comments about. You just lump them all together and you find a 0.03 correlation. But guess what? If you take the same data sets, and Jean Twenge and I did this, take the same data sets, use the same statistical techniques, but you zoom in on girls and social media, the correlation isn't 0.03, it's 0.2, which is a very large correlation in public health matters. The correlation between exposure to lead in childhood and adult IQ is 0.09. Public health is all about effects around 0.05 to 0.15, 0.2 at the most. This is as big as anything else we worry about.
And the question that I was kind of asking, beyond my personal goals, was how does the internet use me, and how do I use the internet? And it's at what point are my decisions and my goals dictating my behavior on the internet, and at what point are the apps and the people and the processes and just how the internet is, the medium itself, how is that dictating my behavior, and how is that changing my behavior?
We found about 15 experiments, and the great majority of them also, using random assignment, find effects on mental health. You want more evidence? Ask the girls. That's what Facebook did in that study that was leaked last September. And what do the girls say? They say it loud and clear. It's social media, and especially Instagram. As one girl in the UK said, the reason why our generation is so messed up and has higher anxiety and depression than our parents is because we have to deal with social media. Everyone feels like they have to be perfect.